I'm Teneshia Hudspeth, your Harris County Clerk and Chief Elections Official of Harris County. So here we are, another election. Can we all believe that? They just keep coming and coming and coming. Harris County Elections Office, we're committed to well-organized, transparent, and fair elections. And you'll see a great example of what that looks like today. So thank you to the Harris County Clerk staff who is here. Our office conducts elections in accordance with the requirements set forth in the Texas Election Code. Since regaining control of Harris County elections last September, we've conducted 2 successful elections in November general and December runoff municipal elections. We have 3 main objectives, right? To conduct elections with a nonpartisan spirit, provide all voters with information, materials, and assistance needed to vote, and strengthen voters' confidence in the elections process in accordance with state and federal guidelines. So for eligible voters who plan to vote in the March 5th primary, I hope that's every qualified registered voter here in Harris County. Primary elections are an important part of voting by making sure your voice is heard. Political parties hold primary elections to determine their candidates for the November general elections. While there is a presidential election this year, voters will also vote for candidates running for offices not only at the federal and state, but more importantly, the local level, those elected officials who meet you at your doorstep. There are a lot of contests on this primary ballot. Voters can view and print their sample ballot from our website, harrisvotes.com. In Harris County, the Democratic primary has a total of 119 races. And the Republican primary has 122 races. Again, Democratic primary has a total of 119 races. Republican primary has a total of 122 races. However, voters will only see in contests connected to their address where they are registered. That's in a ballpark of from 56 to 65 contests on those ballots. Again, you vote according to where you are registered. That's still quite a few races and contests that voters should be prepared to see on their ballot. Depending again where you're registered and which party you're choosing to vote in, we strongly encourage you go to harrisvotes.com or call our election hotline, at 713-755-6965. We encourage voters to consider voting during early voting. And why are we here today? Well, for many reasons, but more importantly, tomorrow is the start of early voting. Early voting begins again February 20th and ends March 1st. That's February 20th through March 1st. There are 79 total early voting centers where voters can choose to vote absolutely anywhere. We are still voting on a countywide polling place program, and voters have 79 different voting locations they can choose from throughout Harris County. Again, for registered voters in Harris County. The polls open at 7 o'clock a.m. Right now and all over the weekend leading up to today, we have early voting sites setting up, preparing to receive voters tomorrow morning and throughout the early voting process. So we recommend that all those who are planning to early vote to have a plan. Go to harrisvotes.com, look and see what location you're going to go to on what day. Also visit our wait time feature, right? When you go to look at voting locations, you can signify by green, yellow, or red on that website. Whether green, obviously we know green means go. Yellow means there might be a little traffic. Red means there's probably a line. So make a plan to vote. View your specific sample ballot and look at the contest and prepare yourself. You can print that ballot out, take it into the polling location. Again, written materials are permitted inside the polling location. I know we live in an age where electronics and our cell phones and touchscreen is secondhand nature. And some people are going to be so proud that they're going to want to take selfies to show you that they voted. But make sure you do that after you finish voting. You can take your I voted sticker or your access card and still show and encourage voters to vote. Again, we recommend voting early. We're in Houston, rodeos going on, weather events can happen. But if you're that traditional election day voter, we'll come back and talk about all about election day. You will still be able to vote at any location on election day. There'll be 3 times the amount of polling locations, and we look forward to serving you and seeing you. Voters should know as you walk into the poll to qualify and provide your ID or your qualifying documents. The election worker will have you verify your address and information as they always do. But in a primary election, Texas has open primaries. Although you don't register by party, you will have to signify whether you're voting Democrat and Republican. Trust me, our election clerks and our workers don't want to get in your business and know which way you want to vote. But you should know that voting in a primary every even year does require you to signify that particular party that you want to vote in to determine the nominees for November. You will simply press which party on the iPad yourself, Democrat or Republican. Those workers are going to be very prepared and sensitive to the needs of the voters to be able to cast your ballot. But that's probably one of the most important things you should know as you prepare for this election. All right, I will open up for questions at this time.
Clerk, I think you kind of mentioned in your last answer, but this is the first ever joint primary. Can you just walk us through what that experience looked like for voters and how that'll be different maybe than what they've seen in past primaries?
Thank you for that question. The question is in regards to now we have a joint primary. It is history making, first time ever in Harris County history that we have a joint. During early voting, which is the period we're getting ready to go into right now, you won't notice much of a difference at all, right? Democrats and Republicans are working together. They're going to be those traditional early voting sites. You'll walk in, you'll qualify. The question will be asked what party you're voting in, and anyone will be able to service you. On election day, and part of what we are doing here today and why you see this mock setup is for voters to be familiar with what they're going to experience on election day. In previous years, for many years, the two political parties either had separate locations altogether on election day or same locations, separate setups. That meant Democrats or Republicans only voted on the machines for Democrats or Republicans. What's different here? What's different here is all voters are going to vote on all the same equipment, much similar to a November election. So I don't know that voters are going to be able to tell as much of a difference as the election workers will, who have done primaries in the past. And two things have brought us here, which I think is commendable to both the political party chairs. We had legislation that would have placed demands on Harris County to have the most amount of polling locations that we've ever seen, and to have additional equipment, which we expressed our challenges in the future at the very beginning of this year. And so both political party chairs have come together and decided to do the joint along with our office, who is merely the contractor to provide the voting equipment, the locations and things of that nature, to come together, work together, have more than enough equipment and resources. But again, on election day, what you will see different is the election workers will have a name tag on that says Democrat or Republican. The Republican Party will service their voters. The Democratic Party will service their voters. Or a voter can choose to have either party service them. What is most important is voters should know that we have all the resources in place to be able to serve you. We have that expectation of the political parties when they come in on election day to be prepared and to receive any voter no matter which way you choose to vote. And so we have a mock setup today that will kind of walk you through the process of what to expect. Again, very similar to November, but signifying that Republicans obviously handle provisionals and forms and their own paperwork, Democrats the same. So that is what we're looking at. I think, we don't need to overthink this. It's actually going to be a lot smoother than we believe it will be. The biggest part is the cooperation, right? Politics are politics. The political parties and those individuals who work are going to be very passionate about their party and their measures, and we should respect that, but we should also be prepared to work together. That's what the county clerk's office has done, and that's what we will continue to do, and that's the expectation that we have of the political parties. Next question, please.
Can you talk about voter turnout? What are you expecting for this primary?
Yeah, it's kind of hard to say, right? But I will love to give you all some numbers compared to the last presidential year in 2020. On the Republican Party side, there was a total of 195,723 total votes in the Republican primary in the year of 2020, the last presidential. On the Democratic primary side, in 2020, there were 328,496 total votes on the Democratic Party primary side in 2020. We know that elections, voters choose to vote based on what's on the ballot, who's on the ballot, what measures, what platforms, what is important to them. And again, this is a presidential year. If individuals are not sure about their voter registration being updated, we encourage you to go to hctax.net. hctax.net, look up your voter registration. If you happen to go to Harris Votes, you can still choose the voter registration tab, and it'll take you to that page to verify your voter registration, whether it's updated or not, and know when you go to vote. Viewing that specific ballot at Harris Votes is so important. So thank you. Those are the numbers from 2020. It's hard to say what we expect But I think as we get into early voting, we'll have a good temperature by the end of the week to see if it's trending up or if it's trending down. Thank you for that question. Next question, please.
You mentioned just telling voters not to take the selfie inside the polling place.
Sure.
What are some other kind of pitfalls or things to watch out for? Common mistakes do you see voters make that you want them to be aware of?
Absolutely. So the question is around what are some tidbits that voters should know other than making a plan to vote when going to vote? There is a place for so many parts of the process. One of the first things that voters experience when they're coming into a polling location, simply driving in, is campaigners, right? Electioneers and election workers, and they're pushing the cards and they're asking you to vote for either or. Those individuals do have the right to do that. I know that doesn't always make voters so happy. They want to get in and vote and get out. As long as that is done 100 feet outside the poll, which every polling location should have a distance marker, that is part of their job. If you receive a push card, the law says written materials can be taken into the polling location. So those written materials can be taken in. Now, election judge or clerk might say, use it and put it away. This is not for discussion once you get within the 100 feet of the poll. But those folks are part of the process. Other things that voters should know, if you're sick or disabled and you're a little bit nervous about going into the polling location and you maybe didn't get to the vote by mail process, you can choose to vote curbside. This is not drive-through. Let me be very clear. This is not drive-through voting. This is curbside voting for those that are sick or disabled. There is a buzzer at every single polling location during early voting and election day to receive an election worker to come out and provide the process to you there in terms of voting. And a really important deadline is coming up this Friday. That is for those who do qualify to vote by mail. The deadline is February the 23rd. That means we have to receive your application in our office by the 23rd, not postmark. If you're 65 years of older, if you are sick or disabled on or before election day, these are qualifiers to qualify to vote by mail. If you're traveling and you're not sure you're going to be here during early voting outside of the county or election day, if you're a pregnant mother perhaps, and you're not sure if that baby's going to arrive in between early voting or election day, that would be a good qualifier prior to Friday. If you were confined in jail but not convicted, that is also another qualifier to vote by mail. So again, that deadline is this Friday, February the 23rd. Yep, I had to think about that date, February the 23rd, and we need to receive those applications. If you have more information or you're not sure or you need to see clarity around the vote by mail process, please call 713-755-6965, 713-755-6965. Next question, please.
Central count is occurring here, correct?
That's correct. Right now, we are standing in the Election Technology Center, and it's a tight room. Can't we all see that, right? This is one of the spaces in this operation. This will serve as our election command, election night, and our election central count. For those who are not sure what central count means, that means where votes are tallied and a lot of the process comes to conclusion on election night. So we are standing here. This will be central count for tonight, and we hope for bigger horizons in future elections. Next question.
One more question. So really the only difference from the past election we just had is that for this one you basically have to tell, or I guess pick, what party you are voting for when you walk in.
That is the biggest difference,
okay.
Right? There are going to be some other small differences, and we kind of described it and talked about it today in which you'll witness, but it is. A voter has to declare which party they're voting in for this primary. Now, do know, if you vote in the Democrat or Republican primary, you have to vote in that same primary for the runoff May 28th. Okay, you can't jump parties in the middle of the primary season. So if you're choosing to vote a Republican ballot when it comes to the runoff, and I'm pretty sure there's going to be a runoff because there are many races with quite a bit of contests that have many candidates in those races, and so voting in the same primary for that election year is what is different. One is declaring the party, and two is staying within the same party for the primary and the runoff.
What about independent?
That's a great question. I get this question all the time. What if I'm independent, Green Party, or Purple Party, or Green Party, whatever one you want to say. In Texas, the two major determined political parties is the Republican and Democratic Party. So you either vote in the primary or you choose not to vote in the primary. Now, when you get to the November general ballot, you don't have to choose or declare a particular party. You can vote across party lines. And when you get to November, you will see some individuals signified as independent, libertarian, or Green Party. But for the primary, you have to declare Democratic or Republican. Some choose to vote one or the other, or choose not to vote in a primary for that reason. But again, it's really important for voters to know this election determines who are the nominees on the November ballot from federal down to local. So if you choose not to vote in this and wait to November, then obviously, you know, that's the first step. We have a campaign right now that you will hear on the radio, that you probably see directly to my right-hand side, maybe your left-hand side, that says your vote starts here. The reason why the messaging is your vote starts here is because there are going to be quite a few elections between now and November, and your vote starts here, right? Because you are declaring the candidates that will go to November. And that will be the final step, right? So we hope that everyone is aware, one, that there's election going on. You all are here to help with that today, that early voting is getting ready to begin, and your vote starts here.
Can you talk about just kind of backup plans for if equipment goes down or paper shortages, just anything that may come up during early voting?
The question is in regards to equipment, concerns, paper shortages, that sort of thing. I want to reiterate, and I've said this a lot, one thing we will not do is run out of paper. We have more than enough paper. We over-prepared between last fall and now. Voters should know when they go in to vote, their printed paper ballot will be on an 8.5 by 11 document. 1 page is what you're printing on. We were able to work on a very strong software upgrade. Our teams didn't get much of a Christmas break because we wanted to make sure that we were able to do all we could as we approached even presidential year, where ballots tend to be the longest in Harris County in our nation. And so when voters go in, of course, there's going to be many contested pages on the actual voting machine. But when you print on the paper in the voting site, it will be 1 page, 8.5 by 11 on 2 columns. Your decisions will be made and then scanned in. Now, for those who are voting by mail, obviously it's not going to be a 1 page. It's going to be multiple pages front and back. But thank you for that question. In terms of equipment, our teams have worked day and night to test all of our equipment. But like any type of electronic systems, you don't know until you know. We have election techs at every voting site. We will have election techs in the field. We call them cluster techs that are ready to prepare and move forward. And then we have our staff, who's also our training and recruitment teams. All hands are on deck, we call it. We say all hands on deck when it comes to elections. And so we have our processes in place as elections play out. And there is no way to predict what's going to come out at what voting site. As soon as we get the call or we get the signification from our election judges or clerks, we go into our layered preparation plans to cover those. But we live in Houston. We don't know if power's going to go out. We don't know if facilities will go out. But just know that as we move forward, we figure it out as we go. And every election, we learn something new that we didn't know could happen before. So we roll with the punches. This is a large operation. I always say Harris County is the 3rd largest county in the nation and the largest county in the state of Texas. So it takes a huge village to get it done. So thank you all so much for being here and covering this today. Any other questions?
Do you anticipate a long delay in voter counts?
Thank you for that question. It's in regards to long delay in voter counts. What I can tell you is we're in a much smaller facility than NRG. And so our resources are limited in terms of having that larger footprint. I do anticipate that we're going to have a long night, election night, leading into the very next morning. But as we get closer to that time frame and we see how election day is going, we'll be providing live updates throughout election day to let you know. We should have no issues with early voting numbers coming out between that 7 o'clock to 7:30 period. But as we are reporting in throughout the night, it will be a long night. So strap up, because we will be here a long time. But that's okay, because we're getting out in front of this now. We're explaining to everyone that elections just don't magically happen. Machines don't just build themselves, and people don't just automatically start doing it overnight. It takes 6 to 9 months for us to prepare to get to an election day for any election. And then once we get done and we get to that final night, We're talking about 545 election day polls with thousands of election workers who have to then make sure they go through all their checks and balances. And trust me, it is a lot to shut down that poll, to report their boxes and their information in, then for us to receive it in real time with chain of custody, following the law, to report results out. And so if you didn't learn about elections and how detailed oriented they were before, you will learn under this administration. So thank you for that question. It will be a long night, so we should all be prepared.
And staffing, polls are all staffed for early voting?
Thank you for that question. Polls are all staffed for early voting, and I say that with a big, huge smile because there's nothing better than knowing that we're fully staffed. However, you all should know, things happen. People get sick, someone doesn't show up, and so we have a ready pool of individuals who's ready to step in and go to those polls in case something happens between tonight and tomorrow. But we are fully staffed for early voting. 79 early voting sites. Early voting's from February 20th through March 1st. No excuses. It includes a Saturday and Sunday. Your vote starts here. We want to see you at the poll, so thank you for allowing us to serve you. Any other questions? One last question, and then we'll close out and we'll get to the mock setup here. All right, that means we covered it all. Thank you all so very much.